The smoke alarm shrieked through the penthouse as I deliberately burned the third batch of hors d'oeuvres. Black smoke curled toward the vaulted ceiling while my husband Derek rushed into the kitchen, his face already flushed with embarrassment. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. What the hell, Natalie? He grabbed the smoking tray from my hands, tossing it into the sink. The entire executive board is arriving in 20 minutes. 20 minutes. I blinked at him, letting my eyes water from the smoke. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I just wanted everything to be perfect for your big night. Derek's jaw clenched as he stared at the charred remains of what should have been prosciutto-wrapped figs. Behind him, through the kitchen doorway, I could see our living room transformed into an elegant dining space. Crystal chandeliers I'd commissioned last year cast perfect light over the custom mahogany table. Original Rothko paintings, my paintings, adorned the walls. The Steinway grand piano in the corner had been my mother's gift to me when Apex Industries went public. Apex Industries, my company. The empire I'd built from a cramped studio apartment with nothing but a laptop, a business degree, and an unshakable vision for revolutionizing supply chain logistics. 12 years of 16-hour days, brutal negotiations, and calculated risks that had transformed a startup into a multinational corporation worth $4.3 billion, and Derek thought he worked there as their chief operating officer, completely unaware that his wife, the woman he constantly called his little housewife project, was actually the founder and CEO hidden behind layers of corporate structure, NDAs, and a very carefully maintained public persona. Derek pinched the bridge of his nose. Just stay in the kitchen, okay? Order something. I don't care what. But for God's sake, don't come out until I call you. The board doesn't need to see this disaster. He turned and walked away, already pulling out his phone to presumably order emergency catering. I waited until I heard him greeting the first arrivals at the door before allowing myself a small smile. The smoke alarm finally stopped its piercing wail. I opened the industrial-grade refrigerator, the one Derek thought was unnecessarily expensive for someone who can't cook, and pulled out the 5 courses I'd actually prepared earlier with the help of Chef Michelle, who ran the Michelin-starred restaurant on Apex's executive floor. Everything was perfect. Seared scallops with truffle foam, Wagyu beef Wellington, lobster bisque that had taken 6 hours to perfect. I'd been planning this evening for 3 months, ever since I overheard Derek laughing on the phone with his colleague about how his charity case wife couldn't even manage to land a job as an administrative assistant. The CEO dinner, he'd said, voice dripping with condescension, is going to be at our place. Yeah, I know. I told Natalie to stay hidden. Last thing we need is her bumbling around, trying to impress people way out of her league. Out of my league. The phrase had echoed in my mind for weeks. I arranged the first course on the serving cart, adjusted my simple black dress, Chanel, though Derek assumed it came from a department store clearance rack, and wheeled it toward the dining room. The voices grew louder as I approached. Absolutely crush the quarterly projections. Someone was saying, the CEO must be thrilled with our performance. Has anyone actually met her? A woman's voice asked. Veronica Ashford remains such an enigma. 12 years running this company, and I've only ever seen her in video conferences with her camera off. Veronica Ashford. My public persona? The name on all the official documents, delivered through my network of lawyers and executives who'd been with me since the beginning. Only 7 people in the world knew that Veronica Ashford and Natalie Reed were the same person. I heard she's some kind of recluse. Derek's voice cut through. Probably scarred or disfigured. Why else the secrecy? Laughter rippled through the room. I paused just outside the doorway, my hand steady on the cart handle. Well, whoever she is, another man said, she signs our paychecks, so I'm not complaining. Speaking of paychecks, Derek announced, and I could hear the pride in his voice. I got the promotion. Senior Vice President of Operations, effective next month. Youngest SVP in company history. Applause erupted. My grip tightened on the cart handle. The promotion he thought he'd earned through merit and hard work was actually a carefully orchestrated test. For 6 months, I'd been watching him, documenting his decisions, his leadership style, his integrity. And for 6 months, I'd watched him fail spectacularly. The inflated expense reports, the harassment complaints from female junior executives that he'd convinced HR to bury, the proprietary information he'd been selling to our competitor, Titanium Logistics, in exchange for stock options. Every email, every wire transfer, every backroom deal. I had it all. But I needed tonight. I needed to see him in his element, surrounded by the people he respected, finally given the rope to hang himself with. I pushed the cart through the doorway. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Oh, perfect timing, Derek said without looking at me. Everyone, the first course. Just leave it on the table, honey. I began placing the scallops in front of each executive, moving silently around the table. 20 faces I recognized from board meetings and video conferences. 20 people who'd helped build my company into what it was today. Victoria Chen, CFO, who'd taken a chance on my vision when every venture capitalist in Silicon Valley had laughed me out of their offices. Robert Patterson, CTO, whose revolutionary blockchain integration had saved us millions in logistics costs. Amanda Foster, General Counsel, who'd fought off 3 hostile takeover attempts with the ferocity of a lioness protecting her cubs. And Derek, sitting at the head of my table, in my penthouse, wearing the watch I'd bought him, drinking the wine from my cellar. "This looks incredible," Victoria said, examining her plate. "Derek, you didn't mention your wife was such an accomplished chef." Derek barely glanced at the food. "Oh, she's full of surprises, mostly disappointing ones, but occasionally she manages something adequate." The table fell silent for a moment. I saw Amanda's eyes flick to me, then away. A flash of discomfort crossed Robert's face. "That's a bit harsh, don't you think?" Victoria ventured carefully. Derek shrugged, spearing a scallop. "It's just the truth. Natalie's been trying to find her place for years. Job interviews, volunteer work, even took some online business courses once. Nothing ever sticks." He popped the scallop into his mouth, chewed, swallowed. "I keep telling her, some people are just meant to be support staff, you know? Not everyone can be a leader." I stood frozen behind his chair, watching 20 pairs of eyes avoid looking at me directly. The humiliation was intentional, performative. Derek knew exactly what he was doing. "These scallops are perfect," Amanda said firmly, her voice carrying an edge. "Seriously, Natalie, this is restaurant quality." "Thank you," I said softly, playing my role. "I'm glad you like them." "See?" Derek gestured at me with his fork. "She's good at the domestic stuff. That's her talent. Nothing wrong with that." I retreated to the kitchen, leaving them to their first course and their awkward silence. Through the doorway, I heard the conversation shift back to business, to quarterly reports and market expansion and the mysterious CEO who never showed her face. My phone buzzed. A text from Catherine Wu, my head of security, and one of the 7 people who knew the truth. "Team is in position. Video and audio recording from 6 angles. Legal has confirmed. Everything is admissible. You sure you want to do this?" I typed back quickly. "Has he transferred the titanium files yet?" 20 minutes ago, $500K deposited into his offshore account. We have everything." I looked at the remaining courses waiting on the counter. The beef Wellington would take 20 minutes to plate properly. The lobster bisque another 10 after that. Then dessert, coffee, and the after-dinner drinks when people really relaxed and spoke freely. Stick to the timeline, I texted back. He'll incriminate himself further. They always do. I plated the second course, a delicate salad with candied walnuts, goat cheese, and a champagne vinaigrette that had taken me 3 attempts to perfect. As I wheeled it out, I could hear Derek in full form, telling some story about a deal he'd closed in Singapore. And I told them, either they sign by midnight or we walk. The CEO backed my play completely. See, that's what I appreciate about Veronica Ashford. She trusts her top executives to make bold moves. Bold moves, I murmured, placing a salad in front of him. Indeed. Derek finally looked at me, his eyes slightly unfocused from the wine. What was that? Nothing. Enjoy your salad. You know what? Derek suddenly pushed back his chair, standing. The alcohol was hitting him faster than usual, not surprising, given that I'd been pouring him the 18% ABV wine while everyone else got the 12% vintage. I think everyone should know something about my wife. My heart rate didn't change. I'd been preparing for this moment for months. Derek, Victoria warned quietly, maybe we should just enjoy the meal. No, they should know. Derek circled around to me, placing a hand on my shoulder that felt like a weight. Natalie here has applied to Apex Industries 4 times. 4 times. Twice for administrative positions, once for a marketing coordinator role, and, this is the best part, once for a senior analyst position in operations. My department. The hand on my shoulder squeezed slightly, not enough to hurt, but enough to remind me of his control, or what he thought was his control. And you know what happened every single time? Derek looked around the table playing to his audience. Rejected. Not even an interview for the first 3. The 4th time, they let her interview just to be polite, and she bombed so badly that HR flagged her application to never be considered again. That was a lie. I'd never applied to Apex Industries because I'd founded Apex Industries, but Derek had created this narrative over the past 3 years, telling it so often that I think he'd started to believe it himself. Derek, that's enough, Amanda said, her voice sharp. This is inappropriate. Is it? Derek released my shoulder and walked back to his seat. I'm just being honest. The CEO always talks about transparency and integrity. Well, here's some transparency. My wife is a professional failure who can't hold down a job, can't cook unless she burns the kitchen down first and spends my money faster than I can earn it. Your money, I repeated softly. Yes, my money. The money I earn through actual work and talent. Not through luck or marrying someone successful. I placed the last salad plate on the table. This penthouse, the one we're sitting in right now, do you remember how we acquired it? Derek blinked, caught off guard by the question. We bought it. Together. We bought it with $4.2 million cash. I continued, my voice still gentle. No mortgage. Do you remember where that money came from? My signing bonus from Apex, Derek said quickly. When they recruited me 5 years ago? Your signing bonus was $75,000, Victoria interjected quietly. She was looking at me now with new interest. I process all executive compensations. Derek's face flushed. Investment returns then. I've been very successful with my portfolio. Your portfolio, I said, walking back toward the kitchen. That lost $43,000 last year according to our tax returns. The returns I file, the returns I've always filed. The dining room had gone silent. Natalie, Derek's voice carried a warning tone. Don't. Don't what? I paused in the doorway. Don't tell the truth? But Derek, you just said the CEO values transparency and integrity. I'm just following her example. I disappeared into the kitchen before he could respond, my heart finally beginning to race. Not from fear, but from anticipation. Behind me, I heard someone, Robert, I think, say quietly, Derek, how exactly did you afford this place? That's none of your business, Derek snapped. Actually, Amanda's voice was ice cold. If you've been misrepresenting your financial situation to the company, it very much is our business. We conduct background checks and financial reviews for all executives above a certain level. Unexplained wealth can indicate fraud or corruption. Are you accusing me of something? I'm saying your math doesn't add up. I plated the beef Wellington, taking my time, letting the tension simmer. Through my phone, I watched the video feed Catherine had set up. Derek was sweating now, his confidence cracking. The third course went out without incident. Everyone ate in relative silence, the earlier joviality replaced by an uncomfortable tension. Derek tried to restart the conversation several times, but his attempts fell flat. It was during the lobster bisque, course 4, that everything truly began to unravel. This is extraordinary, Robert said, gesturing with his soup spoon. Natalie, where did you learn to cook like this? Paris, I answered. Le Cordon Bleu. I spent a summer there after college. Which college? Victoria asked. The question seemed casual, but her eyes were sharp. MIT, I said. Business and computer science. Double major. Derek's spoon clattered against his bowl. She's joking. Natalie went to community college for 2 semesters before dropping out. Actually, I set down my serving tray. I graduated summa cum laude in 2011, received the Dean's Award for Entrepreneurial Excellence. My thesis was on optimizing global supply chain logistics using predictive AI modeling. The table had gone completely still. Victoria set down her spoon carefully. That's the exact framework Apex Industries was built on. The proprietary algorithm that launched the entire company. I smiled at her. Yes, it is. Derek stood so abruptly his chair toppled backward. What game are you playing? No game, just transparency, integrity. I looked at each face around the table. The truth is, I've been lying to all of you for a very long time. Well, lying by omission. Allowing assumptions to persist without correction. Natalie, stop it, Derek hissed. You're embarrassing yourself. Am I? I pulled out my phone, tapped a few buttons, and the lights dimmed. The wall behind Derek, what he thought was just an expensive accent wall, illuminated, revealing itself as a massive LED screen. The Apex Industries logo appeared. Then my MIT graduation photo. Then the original business registration for Apex Industries, filed in Delaware, January 15, 2013. Founder and CEO, Natalie Alexandra Reed. No, Derek whispered. The penthouse, I continued, advancing the presentation with a flick of my finger, was purchased with money from Apex's Series A funding round. The cars in the garage, the art on the walls, the clothes you're wearing. Derek. All of it came from my company. The company I built. The company I run. Bank statements appeared on the screen. Transfer records, corporate documents with my signature. Veronica Ashford, Amanda breathed. Veronica Ashford is a pseudonym, an anagram actually. Natalie Alexandra Reed rearranged becomes Veronica Ashford. Well, almost. I took some creative liberty. I advanced the presentation again. I created the public persona because I was tired of being targeted by fortune hunters. 3 relationships destroyed by men who saw me as a bank account with a pulse. So when I met Derek at that charity gala 5 years ago, I decided to try something different. Derek was staring at the screen, his face cycling through shock, disbelief, and dawning horror. I presented myself as a struggling freelance consultant, drove a Toyota, lived in a modest apartment, wore clothes from Target. And Derek, you seemed so genuine at first, so supportive, so different from the others. I let the bitterness creep into my voice. But the moment we married, the moment you moved into this penthouse that you thought we'd bought together with our money, you changed. Or maybe you just revealed who you'd been all along. This is insane, Derek said, but his voice cracked. You're making this up. Some kind of sick revenge fantasy because I've been honest about your limitations. My limitations. I laughed, the sound sharp. Victoria, would you please confirm the founder and current CEO of Apex Industries? Victoria pulled out her phone, fingers flying across the screen. We'd rehearsed this moment, but she still made a show of checking the corporate records. According to our encrypted files, accessible only to board members, Natalie Alexandra Reed, CEO and majority shareholder, 67% controlling interest. Robert, how many times have you reported directly to Veronica Ashford? Dozens, Robert said slowly, weekly video meetings for the past 8 years. And you've never seen her face? Always just voice. You said. He trailed off, understanding dawning. The background noise in our calls. I always heard cooking sounds, kitchen timers, running water. I thought you worked from home, but I figured you had a private chef or something. I was cooking, I said simply, preparing meals for my husband, the husband who worked at my company, who I'd planted in the operations department through a recruitment firm, who had no idea his wife was his ultimate boss. Why? Derek's voice was barely a whisper. Why would you do this? Because I wanted to see who you really were. The real you, not the performance you put on when you thought I had money or power. And Derek, you showed me exactly who you are. I advanced the presentation one more time. Emails appeared on the screen. Derek's emails. To Titanium Logistics, our primary competitor. Confidential bid information, client lists, proprietary algorithm details. For the past 8 months, I said, my voice hardening, you've been selling company secrets to our competitors. $500,000 in payments to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands, an account you opened last year, thinking I'd never notice because you assumed I was just a naive housewife who couldn't even balance a checkbook. Derek looked around the table wildly. That's fabricated. She's trying to frame me because she's mentally ill. She's been obsessed with me working at Apex. We have your laptop. Amanda cut him off. Her voice was professional, clinical. We've had forensic accountants examining your financial records for 3 months. We have the wire transfers, the encrypted emails, the burner phone you thought was untraceable. We have everything. Derek's legs seemed to give out. He collapsed back into his chair. But that's not all, I continued. We also have the harassment complaints. 7 women in the past 2 years, junior executives, analysts, administrative staff. All of them came forward with complaints about your behavior. All of them were pressured by you to withdraw those complaints or accept settlements with NDAs attached. The settlements came from company funds, Victoria added. Unauthorized use of corporate money to cover up your misconduct. That alone is grounds for immediate termination and potential criminal charges. I walked slowly around the table, stopping behind Derek's chair. You called me a failure, a disappointment, someone who couldn't even land an entry-level position. You've spent 3 years systematically destroying my confidence, isolating me from friends, making me question my own intelligence and worth. Natalie, But the truth is, Derek, while you were playing big shot executive, I was running a multinational corporation. While you were taking credit for other people's work and selling out your colleagues for cash, I was building something real, something meaningful. And tonight, in front of the entire executive board, you've given us everything we need to not only fire you, but ensure you never work in this industry again. I leaned down, my mouth close to his ear. You wanted transparency? Here it is. You're done. Your career is over. And that bankruptcy you're about to face? That's all yours. Because as of tomorrow morning, you'll have nothing. No job, no income, no reputation, and certainly no penthouse. I straightened up, addressing the table. The prenuptial agreement Derek signed before our wedding, the one he barely read because he assumed I had nothing worth protecting, clearly states that in the event of divorce due to infidelity, fraud, or criminal activity, he receives nothing. The offshore accounts, the stock options he thought he was cleverly hiding, even the watch on his wrist, all of it either belongs to me or is evidence in the criminal case we're building. Derek's face had gone gray. Criminal case? Corporate espionage, fraud, sexual harassment, misappropriation of company funds. I counted them off on my fingers. The FBI's Economic Crimes Division has been very interested in the information we've provided them. They'll be in touch soon. Silence fell over the dining room like a heavy blanket. 20 executives sat frozen, their dinner forgotten, watching the implosion of a man they'd thought was one of their own. How long? Derek finally asked, his voice hollow. How long have you known? About the affairs? 2 years? About the corporate espionage? 8 months. But Derek, I've always known who you really were. I saw it that first month after we married, when you thought you'd locked down your meal ticket. The way you looked at me changed. The way you spoke to me changed. You went from supportive partner to condescending overseer in the span of weeks. Then why wait? Why not just end it? Because I needed to be sure. I needed documentation, evidence. I needed to watch you make every wrong choice possible so that when this moment came, there would be no doubt, no gray area, no possibility of you talking your way out or claiming ignorance. I smiled. But there was no warmth in it. I needed tonight. I needed to watch you humiliate me in front of the people I respect most, the people who've helped build my company into what it is. Because now they've seen it too. Now everyone knows exactly who you are. Amanda stood, pulling a leather folder from her briefcase. Derek Thompson, on behalf of Apex Industries and its board of directors, you are hereby terminated for cause, effective immediately. You will be escorted from these premises by security. You are not to contact any Apex employees, access any company systems, or retain any company property. Any attempt to do so will result in additional charges. As if on cue, the penthouse door opened. Catherine Wu walked in with 2 security officers. Their presence a stark reminder that this wasn't just a personal betrayal, it was a corporate crime. Derek looked at me one last time. I loved you. No, I said softly. You loved what you thought I could give you. You loved the idea of a woman who needed you, who depended on you, who made you feel powerful and important. But you never loved me. You didn't even know me. The security officers moved forward. Derek stood, his movements mechanical, defeated. As they led him toward the door, he paused. The scallops, he said absurdly. You didn't burn them, did you? The smoke, the alarm. That was all staged. Everything was staged, I confirmed, including you. The door closed behind him, and the silence that followed felt like a physical presence. Victoria was the first to speak. Well, that was the most dramatic board dinner in corporate history. A ripple of nervous laughter moved through the room. I apologize, I said, finally letting exhaustion creep into my voice. This wasn't how I wanted to reveal myself, but it was necessary. Necessary, Robert repeated. You've been running this company in secret for 12 years. You hired all of us. You've made every major decision, and we never knew. You knew Veronica Ashford, I corrected. I've never lied about my vision for the company or my values. I just obscured the messenger. Amanda was looking at me with something like admiration. The prenup. You had him sign a prenup before you married, even though he thought you had nothing. That's brilliant. My lawyer insisted, said even if I was pretending to be broke, I should protect myself. I'm very glad I listened. What happens now? Victoria asked. With the company, I mean. Are you going to step out of the shadows? I considered the question, looking around at the faces of people I'd worked with for years, people who'd never known my true identity. Maybe. Partially. I like my privacy, but I think it's time to be more present, more visible. Derek isn't the only predator out there who targets women they perceive as weak or unsuccessful. Maybe my story can help others recognize the signs. It will certainly make for interesting press coverage, Robert said dryly. Speaking of which, I pulled out my phone. There's one more thing. Catherine has been documenting everything tonight. Video, audio, all legally obtained with security cameras I had installed in my own home. Tomorrow morning, that footage, along with all the evidence of Derek's crimes, goes to the authorities and to the media. You're going public with everything? Amanda looked concerned. Natalie, the publicity. Will be intense. I know. But Derek needs to face full consequences, and more importantly, those 7 women he harassed deserve to see justice. Their NDAs become void if criminal charges are filed. They'll finally be able to tell their stories. I walked to the head of the table to the seat Derek had occupied. But tonight, before the storm hits, I wanted you all to know the truth. You're my team, my board, the people who've helped build something extraordinary, and I owe you honesty. Even if that honesty is 3 years late, Victoria said, but she was smiling. Even then. Amanda raised her wine glass. To the most unconventional CEO in corporate America. To Natalie, Robert added, and to one hell of a dinner party. They raised their glasses and I raised mine. Water, still, because I needed to stay sharp for what was coming. As they drank, my phone buzzed. A message from Catherine. FBI agents are picking him up at the building entrance. Media embargo lifts at 6 a.m. Your statement is ready for approval. I looked at the message, then at the executives around my table. In 12 hours, my life would change completely. The carefully constructed walls between Natalie and Veronica would come down. The world would know the truth. But right now, in this moment, I was exactly where I needed to be. Now, I said, setting down my glass. Who wants dessert? I made chocolate lava cake from scratch, and unlike the burned hors d'oeuvres, this one actually turned out perfectly. The laughter that followed was genuine, warm, and filled with relief. As I walked back to the kitchen, I caught my reflection in the darkened windows. For the first time in 5 years, I didn't see the woman Derek had tried to make me. Small, uncertain, apologetic. I saw the woman I'd always been. The woman who'd built an empire, who'd survived betrayal, who'd played the longest game and won. I saw Natalie Alexandra Reed, CEO, founder, and finally free. The chocolate lava cakes came out perfectly, their centers molten and rich. As I plated them, adding raspberry coulis and gold leaf, because tonight, of all nights, deserved elegance, I heard the conversation in the dining room shift from shock to business. They were talking about the restructuring we'd need to do in operations. About the internal investigation into anyone else Derek might have compromised. About damage control and press strategy and the dozens of practical concerns that came with exposing a high-level executive's crimes. This was my team. This was my company. And tomorrow, the world would finally know it. I arranged the desserts on the serving cart and wheeled them back into the dining room, ready for whatever came next. The hardest part was over. Derek was gone. The truth was out. Now came the part I'd been preparing for all along, building something even stronger from the ashes of his betrayal. The executive board left at midnight, their departures marked by handshakes that felt different now. Respectful, equal, real. Victoria lingered at the door, her hand on my arm. "Thank you for trusting us," she said quietly. "I know that couldn't have been easy." After the door closed behind her, I stood alone in the penthouse that suddenly felt vast and empty. The dining table was cleared, the dishes in the industrial washer, the evidence of the evening's drama reduced to wine-stained napkins and the faint smell of burned sacrifice from earlier. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing. Catherine had sent 17 updates in the past hour. The FBI had Derek in custody. The media packets were distributed. 6 news outlets had already requested exclusive interviews. My lawyers were fielding calls from Derek's newly retained legal team. Apparently, he'd burned through his emergency contact list and found someone willing to take his case. I walked to the windows overlooking Chicago's glittering skyline. Somewhere down there, in a federal holding facility, Derek was learning what it felt like to be truly powerless. The thought should have brought satisfaction, but instead I felt hollow. A text appeared on my phone screen. Unknown number. "You destroyed my life." Derek? He must have convinced someone to let him make a call, probably claimed he needed to contact his lawyer. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back. "No, you destroyed your own life. I just documented it." The reply came instantly. "I loved you. Everything I did was for us, for our future." My fingers hovered over the keyboard. There was so much I could say. But in the end, I wrote only, "The harassment victims. Did you do that for us too? The women you cornered in conference rooms, whose careers you threatened? Was that for our future?" No response. I blocked the number and called Catherine. "You should be sleeping," she said by way of greeting. "So should you. Status update?" "FBI is processing him now. The espionage charges are federal, so he's looking at serious time if convicted. 10 to 15 years, potentially. The harassment cases are being reopened. All 7 women have been contacted by the DA's office. 5 have already agreed to testify." "And the media?" "Your statement drops at 6 a.m. I've scheduled a press conference for 9. CNN, Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, they'll all be there. Your lawyers want you to wear the Navy suit. Look professional, but approachable. I told them you're not a puppet, and you'll wear whatever you want." Despite everything, I smiled. "The Navy suit is fine. There's something else." Catherine's tone shifted. "We've had 3 more complaints come in through the anonymous hotline. Not about Derek, about other executives." My hand tightened on the phone. "Who?" "I'm sending you the encrypted files now. 2 are about Stephen Marsh in finance. 1 about Patricia Dunn in marketing. All from women in their departments. All describing patterns of inappropriate behavior, retaliation for rejections, hostile work environment." I pulled up my laptop, accessing the secure server. The complaints loaded on screen. Detailed, specific, credible. My stomach turned as I read them. "How did I miss this?" I whispered. "How did it happen under my watch?" "Because you trusted your department heads to handle their own teams. Because predators are good at hiding in plain sight. Because you're one person, Natalie, even if you are the CEO." Catherine paused. "What do you want to do?" I read through the complaints again, my jaw clenching tighter with each paragraph. Stephen Marsh had been with Apex for 7 years, Patricia Dunn for 9. Both were considered top performers, both had glowing reviews, both had brought in millions in revenue. Both had apparently been abusing their power for years. "Full investigation," I said finally. "Bring in an outside firm. I want no questions about objectivity. Put both of them on immediate administrative leave. And Catherine, I want to meet with the women who filed complaints. Personally." "That's not standard protocol." "I don't care. These women came forward knowing they might face retaliation, knowing their careers could be damaged. The least I can do is look them in the eye and promise them that this time, someone is listening. Okay, I'll set it up for next week. Tomorrow. Natalie? Tomorrow, Catherine. Before the press conference, I need to hear their stories before I stand up and tell mine. A long silence then. Understood. I'll make it happen. After we hung up, I poured myself a glass of water and sat at the dining table where, just hours ago, Derek had called me a failure. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd been so focused on orchestrating his downfall that I'd missed the rot spreading through other parts of my company. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was my mother. I saw the news alerts, she said without preamble. Please tell me you're safe. I'm fine, Mom. It's over. Over? Natalie, you just exposed yourself as a secret billionaire CEO and had your husband arrested for corporate espionage. This is just beginning. She paused. I'm proud of you, baby girl. Your father would be too. My throat tightened. Dad had died before Apex took off. Before I'd built the empire he'd always said I was capable of building. He'd never know that his little girl had succeeded where his own business had failed. Thanks, Mom. But Natalie, be careful. You've made yourself a target. There will be people who hate you for your success, who'll try to tear you down, who'll claim you're lying or exaggerating or seeking attention. Promise me you'll be smart about this. I promise. After she hung up, I sat in the quiet penthouse and let myself feel it all. The exhaustion, the anger, the grief for a marriage that had never been real, the fear of what came next. At 3 a.m., I finally went to bed. Sleep came in fragments, interrupted by dreams of courtrooms and cameras and Derek's face when he realized I'd been Veronica Ashford all along. At 5:30 a.m., I woke to my alarm and the sound of helicopters, news helicopters circling the building like vultures. It had begun. Catherine arrived at 6:15 with a full security team, a makeup artist, and enough coffee to fuel a small army. The press conference location has been moved to the Apex headquarters auditorium. We're expecting over 200 journalists. I sipped my coffee, watching the news coverage on my phone. My face was everywhere. Old photos from MIT, blurry images from charity events, speculation about my net worth, my relationship, my motives. CEO catfishes husband in elaborate corporate sting operation, read one headline. Billionaire's revenge? Tech mogul destroys cheating spouse, proclaimed another. I'm not doing this for revenge, I said to Catherine. I know. But revenge makes better headlines than justice. The makeup artist worked quickly, covering the dark circles under my eyes, making me camera ready. I dressed in the navy suit, added my mother's pearl earrings for strength, and looked at myself in the mirror. This was the last morning I'd wake up as nobody. By tonight, the entire world would know Natalie Reed's name. At 7 a.m., I met with the 3 women who'd filed new complaints. They sat in my personal office at Apex headquarters, a space Derek had never even known existed. Sarah, 26, analyst in finance. Maria, 31, senior coordinator in marketing. Jennifer, 28, project manager in marketing. They looked terrified. Thank you for coming, I said, sitting across from them rather than behind my desk, and thank you for your courage in filing these complaints. I know how difficult that must have been. Sarah spoke first, her voice shaking. We almost didn't. After what happened with the complaints against Derek Thompson, we heard they got buried. The women who spoke up got pushed out or paid off. We thought the same thing would happen to us. It won't, I said firmly. I give you my word. What you've described in your complaints, if it's true, and I believe it is, then Stephen Marsh and Patricia Dunn will face consequences, real consequences. Why should we believe you? Maria asked, and there was challenge in her voice. Derek Thompson was your husband. You had access to those harassment complaints against him. You could have stopped it years ago, but you didn't. The accusation hit like a physical blow because she was right. You're absolutely correct, I said. I knew about Derek's behavior for 2 years before I acted. I told myself I was building a case, gathering evidence, waiting for the right moment. But the truth is, part of me was paralyzed by the personal betrayal. I was his wife. I loved him, or I thought I did. And that paralysis, that hesitation, meant more women suffered. I looked at each of them. I can't undo that. I can't give those 2 years back to his victims or erase what they went through. But I can promise you that from this moment forward, I will never let personal feelings stop me from protecting my employees. You deserve a workplace where you're safe, where you're respected, where your complaints are taken seriously. What happens now? Jennifer asked quietly. Now, we investigate. Thoroughly, professionally, objectively. An outside firm will conduct interviews, review evidence, and deliver findings. If those findings support your complaints, Marsh and Dunn will be terminated and referred to law enforcement if criminal charges are warranted. And then we'll examine our entire company culture to understand how this happened and prevent it from happening again. And us? Sarah asked. What happens to us? Will we be protected? You'll be protected. You'll keep your jobs if you want them, with the option to transfer to different departments if you'd prefer. You'll have access to counseling and legal support. And if at any point you feel unsafe or pressured, you contact Catherine Wu directly. She reports only to me. They looked at each other, some silent communication passing between them. Okay, Maria said finally. We'll cooperate with the investigation. After they left, I had 15 minutes before the press conference. I stood in my office looking at the photos on my wall. The very first Apex office, just me and a laptop in a converted warehouse. The day we signed our first major client. The night we went public and I'd celebrated alone in this very office, unable to tell anyone who I really was. Catherine appeared in the doorway. It's time. The walk to the auditorium felt like a march to execution. Security flanked me on all sides. I could hear the crowd before I saw them. Hundreds of voices, camera shutters clicking like mechanical insects. The doors opened. A wall of sound hit me. Flashing lights, shouted questions, the scrape of chairs as everyone stood. I walked to the podium, adjusted the microphone, and looked out at the sea of faces. Good morning, I said. My name is Natalie Alexandra Reed, and I am the founder and CEO of Apex Industries. For 12 years, I've operated under the pseudonym Veronica Ashford. Today, I'm stepping into the light, and I have a story to tell. The silence in the auditorium was absolute. 200 journalists, cameras, and recording devices all focused on me. I gripped the edges of the podium, feeling the cool wood beneath my palms. 12 years ago, I began, I graduated from MIT with a vision for revolutionizing supply chain logistics. I had a breakthrough algorithm, $20,000 in savings, and a dream. I also had something else, a painful education in how the world treats successful women. I clicked the remote, and the screen behind me displayed my early pitch decks, the ones I'd presented to 73 different venture capitalists. 73 meetings. 73 rejections. Not because my business model was flawed, several VCs admitted it was brilliant, but because I was a 23-year-old woman, and apparently, that made me untrustworthy, inexperienced, too emotional to lead. I paused. One investor actually told me I should find a male co-founder to be the face of the company, while I handled the technical work behind the scenes. A ripple of murmurs moved through the crowd. So I created Veronica Ashford, a pseudonym that allowed people to focus on my ideas rather than my gender or age. And it worked. Within 6 months, I had funding. Within 2 years, Apex Industries was profitable. Within 5 years, we went public. The next slide showed Apex's growth trajectory, a hockey stick curve that had made financial headlines. But success came with a price. I attracted attention from people who saw me as an opportunity rather than a person. 3 relationships ended when I discovered my partners were more interested in my bank account than in me. The last one actually had the audacity to present me with an investment opportunity on our anniversary, a scheme to siphon money from my company into his failing startup. I saw some journalists nodding, scribbling notes. So when I met Derek Thompson 5 years ago, I made a choice. I would hide my success. I would present myself as ordinary, struggling even, and see if someone could love me for who I was, rather than what I had. It was a test, and Derek failed it spectacularly. The screen changed to show the evidence: emails, bank transfers, harassment complaints. I watched the journalists' faces change as they processed what they were seeing. For 3 years, my husband systematically belittled me, called me a failure, told our friends I couldn't hold a job, mocked my intelligence, all while working for my company, living in my home, spending my money, and selling my corporate secrets to competitors for personal profit. A hand shot up in the audience. I nodded at the reporter, Sarah Chen from Bloomberg. Ms. Reed, some are calling this an elaborate revenge scheme. How do you respond to accusations that you manipulated your husband and set him up for failure? I didn't manipulate Derek, I said clearly. I gave him every opportunity to be honest, to be faithful, to be ethical. Every choice he made to harass his colleagues, to commit corporate espionage, to demean and control me, those were his choices. I simply documented them. The FBI has the evidence. The courts will decide his guilt, but I refuse to accept blame for his crimes. Another hand. David Martinez from the Wall Street Journal. You waited 2 years after discovering the harassment complaints to take action. Why? This was the question I'd been dreading. I took a breath. Because I was a coward, I said bluntly. The auditorium went silent again. Because he was my husband and I loved him, or thought I did. Because I kept hoping there was some explanation, some misunderstanding. And because of that cowardice, more women were hurt. That's on me. I clicked to the next slide, the new complaint statistics. Yesterday, after Derek's arrest became known internally, 3 more women came forward with harassment complaints. Not about Derek, but about other executives in my company. I met with them this morning. I looked them in the eye and apologized for creating a culture where they felt unsafe reporting abuse. My voice hardened. Effective immediately, Apex Industries is implementing a zero-tolerance policy, independent investigations for every complaint, mandatory training for all executives, third-party oversight, and I'm establishing a $10 million fund to support workplace harassment victims across the industry, not just at Apex, but anywhere. Because this problem is bigger than my company. The questions came faster now. I answered them all. Yes, Derek would face criminal charges. Yes, I was filing for divorce. Yes, the prenuptial agreement meant he would receive nothing. No, I didn't feel guilty about that. Ms. Reed, a voice called from the back. I recognized her, Jennifer Wu from TechCrunch. You've operated in secret for 12 years. Why reveal yourself now? Because hiding was costing too much, I said simply. It was costing my employees their safety. It was costing me my integrity. And it was allowing men like Derek to operate unchecked because they assumed no one was watching. Someone needs to be watching. Someone needs to be accountable. That someone is me. I looked directly into the cameras. I'm done hiding. I'm done pretending to be less than I am to make others comfortable. If that makes me a target, so be it. But I won't be silent anymore. The press conference lasted 90 minutes. By the time Catherine pulled me away, my voice was hoarse and my hands were shaking. You did good, she said, guiding me through a back corridor away from the crowds. That soundbite about not being silent? It's already trending. My phone had exploded with notifications. Messages from former classmates I hadn't spoken to in years, interview requests from major networks, and one text that made my breath catch. "This is Rachel. Derek's Rachel. The analyst he cornered in the supply room 2 years ago. Thank you for believing us. Thank you for not protecting him." I stopped walking, reading the message again. Catherine looked over my shoulder. "You did the right thing," she said quietly. "I should have done it sooner." "Maybe, but you did it. That matters." Over the next week, the story consumed every news cycle. Derek's arrest photos, speculation about the trial, think pieces about workplace harassment, corporate culture, the double standards successful women face. My face was everywhere. Magazine covers, talk shows, social media memes. Some of the coverage was supportive. "Finally, a CEO who prioritizes justice over profit," declared one headline. Others were vicious. "Scorned wife's revenge when personal vendettas masquerade as justice," sneered a conservative commentator. "Did she go too far?" "The ethics of corporate catfishing," questioned a business ethics professor on CNN. I stopped reading the comments after the first day. Nothing good lived in those digital cesspools. The investigation into Stephen Marsh and Patricia Dunn concluded in 10 days. The outside firm's report was damning. Years of harassment, retaliation against women who rejected their advances, systematic abuse of power. Both were terminated and referred to law enforcement. Marsh was arrested for sexual assault. Dunn fled to Canada, where she was fighting extradition. 7 more women came forward with complaints about other executives. Each one was investigated. 3 more terminations followed. I spent hours in meetings with our revised HR team, our new ethics board, our legal counsel. We rewrote policies, created new reporting structures, brought in consultants to audit our entire corporate culture. "You're burning it all down and rebuilding from scratch," Victoria observed during one late-night strategy session. "The board is getting nervous." "Let them be nervous," I said. "We enabled this culture. We allowed predators to thrive because they brought in revenue. That ends now. Even if it costs us profits in the short term? Especially then, what's the point of building an empire if it's built on the backs of people we failed to protect?" Victoria smiled. Spoken like a true leader. 2 weeks after the press conference, Derek's lawyer reached out through official channels. Derek wanted to make a deal. His testimony against Titanium Logistics CEO in exchange for a reduced sentence. I sat in the federal prosecutor's office listening to them outline the proposal. "He's offering full cooperation," the prosecutor explained. "Names, dates, documents, everything he knows about Titanium's corporate espionage operations. With his testimony, we can take down their entire leadership team." "What's he asking for in return?" 7 years instead of 15, minimum security facility, possibility of early parole with good behavior. I thought about the 7 women whose complaints had been buried. About Rachel, cornered in a supply room, afraid to come forward because she thought no one would believe her. About Sarah, Maria, and Jennifer, who'd risked their careers to speak up. "What do the harassment victims think?" I asked. The prosecutor blinked. "I'm sorry?" "The 7 women Derek harassed. Have they been consulted about this deal? Do they get a say in whether their abuser gets a reduced sentence?" That's not standard procedure." "Then change the procedure," I said flatly. "This isn't just about corporate espionage. Derek hurt people. Those people deserve a voice in his plea deal." The prosecutor looked at his assistant, then back at me. "I'll reach out to them." "Thank you." 3 days later, I received a call. 5 of the 7 women had agreed to the deal. They wanted Titanium's leadership prosecuted, even if it meant Derek served less time. Two had asked for victim impact statements to be included in his sentencing hearing. I attended the hearing, sat in the courtroom as Rachel and another woman named Diana stood before the judge and told their stories. Watched Derek sit motionless at the defense table, his expensive suit replaced by prison orange, his confidence shattered. "He made me feel worthless," Rachel said, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. "Every day for 6 months, he found ways to diminish me, my ideas, my work, my appearance. And when I tried to report it, I was told I was being too sensitive, that I should be grateful for the attention from a senior executive." The judge listened intently, taking notes. Diana spoke next. "I quit my job because of him. I walked away from a career I loved because coming to work meant facing my abuser every single day. I want him to know that he didn't just steal proprietary information or commit fraud. He stole our sense of safety, our trust in the workplace, our belief that hard work and talent matter more than whether a powerful man finds you attractive." When the sentencing came down, 9 years, no possibility of parole before 7, I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not vindication, just a hollow exhaustion. Derek looked at me once as they led him away. I couldn't read his expression. Regret, maybe? Or just anger at being caught. I left the courthouse through a side exit, avoiding the cameras. Catherine was waiting in the car. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Tired," I said honestly. "So incredibly tired. Want to get drunk and watch bad reality TV?" Despite everything, I laughed. "That actually sounds perfect." 6 months passed. Apex's stock price had taken a hit initially. Investors were spooked by the leadership shakeup and negative publicity. But our quarterly earnings exceeded projections. The new culture initiatives were working. Employee satisfaction scores were up 37%. Retention had improved. And perhaps most importantly, the harassment reports were down by 82% because potential abusers knew they would face consequences. I did interviews selectively, focusing on business publications and women's leadership forums. Told my story not for sympathy, but as a cautionary tale about the cost of staying silent. "You've become a symbol," one interviewer said. "An icon for women in business standing up against abuse." "I don't want to be a symbol," I replied. "I want to be effective. Symbols are static. I'd rather be a catalyst for real change." The $10 million harassment victim fund had grown to $15 million after other tech leaders contributed. We'd helped 43 women pursue legal action against their abusers, funded counseling for hundreds more, and created a confidential hotline that had received over 2,000 calls. My mother called every week. "How are you really doing?" she'd ask, and I'd give her honest answers. Some days were harder than others. Some nights I woke up angry at myself for not seeing Derek's true nature sooner. Some mornings I looked at the empty side of the bed. I'd moved to a new penthouse, couldn't stay in the old one with all its memories, and felt the weight of loneliness. But mostly, I felt free. Free from pretending to be less than I was. Free from walking on eggshells around someone who resented my success. Free from the exhausting performance of playing small. I started dating again, carefully, honestly. Told potential partners exactly who I was on the first date. Some ran. Some stayed. I was learning to tell the difference between people who wanted Natalie Reed, the billionaire CEO, and people who wanted just Natalie. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday. I signed the papers in my lawyer's office, officially ending a marriage that had never been real. "How does it feel?" Victoria asked when I returned to Apex headquarters. "Like closing a book I should have put down years ago," I said. "But also like finally starting a new one with a blank page." That evening, I stood in my office looking at Chicago's skyline. The city glittered below me, full of life and possibility. My phone buzzed with a message from the woman I'd been seeing for the past month. "Emma, a civil rights attorney who'd heard my story and reached out to offer legal support for the victim fund. Our first coffee meeting had turned into dinner, then another dinner, then a weekend getaway, where we'd talked until dawn about justice and integrity and what it meant to rebuild yourself after betrayal. "Still up for dinner tonight?" Emma's text read. "I promise no work talk. Just wine and terrible jokes." I smiled, typing back, "Perfect. See you at 8. As I gathered my things to leave, Catherine appeared in the doorway. "The titanium trial starts next week," she said. "Derek will testify on Wednesday. The prosecutor wants to know if you'll be there." "No," I said without hesitation. "I've spent enough time in Derek's orbit. This chapter is closed." "Good for you." Catherine leaned against the doorframe. "You know, when you first told me your plan to expose Derek, I thought you were crazy. I thought it would destroy you. Personally, professionally, everything. And I was wrong. You're stronger now than I've ever seen you. Apex is better. Hell, the entire industry is paying attention because of what you did." She grinned. "Turns out burning everything down and rebuilding from the ashes is actually a pretty solid business strategy." I laughed, slinging my bag over my shoulder. "Tell that to our shareholders." "Our shareholders are doing just fine. Stocks back up, profits are solid, and we just landed the Morrison contract. Biggest deal in company history." "We did?" I pulled out my phone, checking my email. Sure enough, there it was. "Catherine, this is incredible." "You're incredible. And it's time you started believing that." As I left Apex headquarters that night, walking past the lobby where my face now hung in an official portrait, no more hiding, no more pseudonyms, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The lonely nights building something from nothing, the pain of betrayal, the courage of women like Rachel and Diana who'd spoken truth to power, the slow, difficult work of transforming a corporate culture built on silence into one built on accountability. It hadn't been easy. It hadn't been clean. There were no perfect heroes in this story, least of all me. But it was real, and it was mine. My phone buzzed with another text from Emma. "Changed my mind, skip dinner, come straight to my place. I'm making pasta and I need your opinion on this legal brief I'm writing about workplace harassment reform." I smiled, typing back, "Legal briefs and homemade pasta? You really know how to romance a girl." "Wait till you see my footnotes. They're incredibly sexy." Laughing, I climbed into my car. Still the modest Toyota, though now people knew I could afford a fleet of Lamborghinis if I wanted. Some things didn't need to change. As I drove through Chicago's streets toward Emma's apartment, towards dinner and terrible jokes and maybe something that could become real, I thought about Derek sitting in his cell, about Stephen Marsh awaiting trial, about all the men who'd thought they could take advantage of women they perceived as powerless. They'd all underestimated their targets, assumed silence meant acceptance, mistook patience for weakness. They'd learned differently. And across the country, in boardrooms and startups and corporate offices, other women were watching, taking notes, finding their courage, planning their own reckonings. The story I'd told, my story, was just one of thousands, but maybe it could be a blueprint, a reminder that staying silent protects predators, that documentation beats denial, that sometimes the only way forward is to burn down the structures that enable abuse and build something better from the ashes. I parked outside Emma's building, grabbed the bottle of wine I'd picked up, and headed inside. Tomorrow, I'd be back at Apex, running board meetings and reviewing quarterly projections and continuing the never-ending work of building a company that treated its people with dignity. But tonight, I was just Natalie, not a CEO, not an icon, not a cautionary tale. Just a woman who'd fought for herself and won, who'd chosen truth over comfort, who'd learned that the most radical act of all was simply refusing to be diminished. I knocked on Emma's door, and when she opened it, Flour on her nose, sauce splattered on her apron, that brilliant smile lighting up her face. I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the naive kind that ignores reality, but the earned kind that comes from surviving the darkness and choosing to believe in light anyway. "Come in," Emma said, pulling me inside, "and prepare yourself. This pasta is either going to be amazing or a complete disaster. No in between." "Story of my life," I said, kissing her cheek. She laughed, leading me toward the kitchen. "Tell me about it." And so I did. Over wine and slightly overcooked pasta, I told her about the dinner party, the revelation, the press conference, the trial. All of it. Emma listened, asked questions, offered insights from her own work with abuse survivors. "You know what strikes me most about your story?" she said finally. "You didn't just take down one man, you changed an entire system. That's rare." "It's not enough," I said. "One company out of thousands. One culture shift in an industry full of problems." "No," Emma agreed, "but it's a start. And sometimes that's all you can do. Start. Let the momentum build." Later, as we sat on her couch with coffee and the terrible jokes she'd promised, my phone buzzed one more time. A message from Rachel, the analyst Derek had harassed. "I got promoted today, department head in operations. They said I earned it through merit and leadership. For the first time in my career, I actually believe them. Thank you for making Apex a place where that's possible." I showed Emma the message. She read it, then smiled at me. "See? You changed her life. How many others can say the same?" I thought about Sarah and Maria and Jennifer, about the 43 women the Victim Fund had helped, about every employee at Apex who could now come to work without fear. "Maybe a few," I admitted. "More than a few." Emma took my hand. "You're allowed to be proud of that, you know. You don't have to minimize what you accomplished just because there's more work to do." She was right. For so long I'd focused on my failures, waiting too long, missing the signs, letting Derek hurt people. But I'd also fought back. Created accountability, changed a culture. That counted for something. "Thank you," I said quietly. "For what?" "For seeing me, the real me, not the headline or the cautionary tale or the symbol, just me." Emma squeezed my hand. "That's the only version I'm interested in." We sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights through her window. Somewhere out there, Derek was in prison. Apex was thriving. Women were coming forward with their stories, emboldened by mine. The world was changing. Slowly, imperfectly, but changing. And I was changing with it, becoming someone I could respect. Someone my father would have been proud of. Someone who chose courage over comfort, truth over convenience, justice over revenge. My phone buzzed once more. "Catherine. Morrison contract officially signed. Champagne tomorrow to celebrate?" I typed back. "Absolutely. But no more CEO dinners at penthouses. Let's stick to restaurants." "Probably wise. Your last dinner party made international news." I laughed, setting down my phone. Emma looked at me curiously. "Good news?" "The best," I said. "Just business as usual at Apex Industries." "Which means?" "Which means," I said, settling into her side, feeling genuinely content for the first time in years. Absolutely nothing is usual anymore. And that's exactly how it should be. Outside, Chicago sparkled. Inside, I'd finally found peace. The story that began with burned hors d'oeuvres and a smoke alarm ended here, in a modest apartment, with good wine and better company, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing I'd chosen the hard right over the easy wrong. Derek had called me a failure in front of the people who mattered most, but in the end, I'd shown them, and myself, exactly who signed the paychecks. And more importantly, I'd shown them who I really was. Someone who refused to stay silent. Someone who fought for what was right, even when it cost her everything. Someone who built empires and then rebuilt them better. Not a failure, not a victim, not a symbol. Just Natalie Reed, CEO, fighter, survivor, and finally free. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.